And COVID-19 has helped a lot to show them. You do not have any real solution to make our economy grow, or that you care at least about their well-being. When I read page 16 of the midterm review speech by the Honourable Minister, I would have laughed if it was not so sad. There in black on white, the Ministry regurgitates all the stories it has been feeding the population for years. I mean, and I want to quote, reviewing the public sector wage bill and assessing the options for every voluntary retirement, unquote, has really turned into a catchphrase. I think it was early in 2017 that I heard this first time, this song. It is now 4 years later, and what have you accomplished other than juggling figures? A little more here, a little less there. All time cloaking it with the apparent respectability of an inherently wrong process. Honourable Speaker, another point, and I quote, reviewing the restructuring of the Public Service Medical Aid Scheme, CMAS, comes to mind on the same page you have mentioned it. What a joke, to be honest. This was written, the same story. It seems to me to cut and paste most of your speech. This was written in 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, and again now in 2020. Same story. When are you going to do actually something about it? Also the restructuring and realigning of the state-owned assets. Exactly how much and how long do you intend to extract from the private sector to maintain the facade that the public entities have not been managed and stolen empty beyond the point of bankruptcy? Where in all this repetition of the same noises, do you find any reference to the National Pension Fund? You don't see any because there is none. This fund is a critical component to ensure the well-being of the elderly. People who have worked their whole lives to contribute to Namibia's prosperity has been on the charts also for 20 years. Imagine that hundreds of thousands of Namibians could have retired with some income had the government not been more concerned with dishing out fishing quotas as personal favors, or prospecting licenses, or large civil projects as political paybacks. But no, the ordinary people are milked to keep the fat cats in business. The only difference is that now the ordinary folks are starting to realize how they have been used for other people's benefit, and particularly those in Swapo who have gained credible wealth by cheating. Honourable Speaker, in this review, the Honourable Minister announced a tax amnesty of sorts by waiving the penalties and reducing the interest if you pay the outstanding tax in a specified time. This is presented as a means to assist companies or individuals to enjoy some relief during a time when their finances are under pressure, but it is just another eyedrop. If the Ministry of Finance is serious about making a dent in the tax evasion, it must start with all those privileged cronies who reap the benefits of all the building projects they scam, and many others. It will return a much bigger reward than allowing a few minor taxpayers some relief in order to collect some tax due to the government. Where is this? The real issue addressed in any budget documentation. We never hear about that. Never. For the past 10 years, since 2020, all these loopholes should have been closed by the intended independent tax authority. Since 2010. It is 10 years later, and again we find an almost exact repeat of previous year's statements. That's why I'm saying a large part of the speech was cut and paste. Same old stories, rhetoric. The Namibian Revenue Agency is envisaged, what the minister said, to be launched next year, again. For the past 20 years, it's next year, upon finalization of the key transitional process. Well, I have news for you, Honorable Speaker and members. Those key transitional processes, both legal and organizational, have now been going on for a decade or more. I know that government's wheels are turning slowly, but at least I had hoped that they might turn efficiently. I put it to you that the midterm review is just a repeat of the same hollow statements of the past 10 or 11 years, and that we have actually come to the point where the economy is being sucked into the debt trap created by the sloppy government. Maybe this could be tolerated were there any evidence that there are positive results for every Namibian in the budget process. But I don't see that, nowhere. All I read on those pages are a repeat of the same mentality, a rewording of the same ineptitudes, and the continued exploitation of every other Namibian who does not benefit from being a member of the inner Swapo circle. And that is the vast majority of our people. Honorable Speaker, I conclude. Come November, our people out there, the electorate, they will hopefully show what they think of your budget.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you very much. Next on my list is Honorable Kawandenge. But can I propose, since we're up against tea time, we take you after tea so you continue with uninterrupted? Thank you. Is that fine? Break for tea. Thank you.
was Honorable Kawandini.
Yes, Honorable Speaker, mine is going to be a very brief contribution to the debate on the floor. First and foremost, we must accept this reality that this budget reflects the shortage of money in state coffers that has been brought to bear not by COVID-19, as the song goes, but primarily that was brought by mismanagement of our resources by this very same government for the past 30 years of our independence. And that is a fact. We are conveniently putting all the blame at the doorstep of COVID-19 as a reason why we don't have resources or the capital to provide amenities to our people. However, this is far from the truth. What the coronavirus did was to expose these government failures of over 30 years to bring much needed development to our people. The state of our hospitals and schools lacking potable water was exposed prominently during the past 6 months than any time before in our history as a country. Honorable Speaker, therefore, I will still contend that this pandemic cannot be used and must not be used as an excuse for our own failure this time around. Bad management, corruption, inflated tendered projects, and milking of state resources are responsible for the financial mess in which we are currently swimming up to our necks. The sad reality is that we cannot borrow from anywhere anymore. At independence, and few years into our independence, we put measures in place and adjusted that we must only borrow up to 35% of our GDP, or what we call debt to GDP ratio. However, because of this management of our resources, we continue to borrow time and time again until we cannot borrow any longer, as we are now standing at almost 68.9% of our debt to GDP ratio. That is scary, Honorable Speaker, for a country small as Namibia to be at that state. However, the question is, what did we do with all this money we have borrowed over all these years? If COVID came and exposed us so terribly, yes, let us agree to disagree. There were some projects undertaken by our government, the Namibian government, that were fruitful, yes, granted, that can be said. But where did the bulk of the money go? Into the pockets of the fish rocks, into the pockets of those that went out of their way to milk the system and the government on a daily basis. Should we have managed our finance better, we could have been in a position now to give another stimulus package to our most affected members of our society. But we cannot do that because we don't have the money at our disposal to do so. And some did also not receive even the first 750. We have an industry led by Honorable Minister of Environment and Tourism. That industry, over 5,000 people lost their jobs in that industry. But what can we do now? Should we have had those resources, we could have done something for them. At least to give another stimulus package or money or whatever we can help them out with, but we cannot do so. Honorable Speaker, what the minister has brought to this house is nothing new. We have heard this sort of speeches from former finance ministers over the years. There was much promised, but yet so little delivered over 30 years ago. The minister talked about Harare Prosperity Plan 2, My question is, Honorable Minister, what has happened to Harare number 1? What was this Harare achievement, if there is any? Should we go from 1 to 2 without looking into the achievement or failures first? Therefore, Honorable Minister, the midterm budget you presented to this House, although government spending is well intended, the taste is in the pudding, and one will want to see the implementation of the resources as allocated, whether they will achieve the intended objectives or not. Honorable Speaker, my only regret in the way government has spent our resources is the fact that I really pity future generations that they will be indebted to these international bodies where we have borrowed money. Now, if you are calling a country to action, the future generation must not pass through our graves and spit on our graves for having indebted this country for them to take care of when we are not there. There should at least be some kind of, some kind of relics or projects that really attest to the fact that we did our best when we were in government. But also, let me also, Honorable Speaker, say this. There is a word that I use in the legal fraternity that they call audi alteram partem, which means hear the other side. The problem with our government is that they hardly listen to the opposition benches. When members of the opposition are bringing on the table concrete proposals, like now when I'm doing that and I'm asking you, what did you do with the state resources for 30 years? They never listen. They are still denying that the country is in better hands, that we know what we are doing, but the country is going down the drain, honorable members of the executive. Isn't it? Isn't it? No, it is. Because if your ratio today, you cannot borrow money any longer, how will you now run this country when you have to service debts after debts every day? And this is my only concern as far as that issue is concerned. But I must also ask pertinently now, finally, Honorable Speaker, Deputy Speaker, whether we are creating a society of proletariats. Or what are we creating? Those that don't have the means to capital. What are we creating? Exactly. Isn't it? This is what works. Because we have the means of production. Oh, he is a capitalist to the core, that one. Oh, sorry. So, Honorable Speaker, I honestly believe and will ask and plead with honorable members of the executive that the ship is sinking and it's time to redirect it for the benefit, and all of us are sitting within it, for the benefit of all Namibians, and that is my humble contribution to the midterm debate or budget. Thank you.
Honorable Kabekosora.
Yeah, thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Speaker. I will be very, very brief because this is a midterm budget review where a lot of money were remitted from one account to the other, and where the Honorable Minister of Finance is telling us that is for a good cause. So I would give you the benefit of the doubt. Honorable Deputy Speaker, I am on record saying that poverty in Namibia is man-made. And obviously when you extrapolate that statement, it goes to the government, so you're not too far away from that. The reason we are saying that poverty in Namibia is man-made is because Namibia is not a poor country. It's got a very small population with a lot of resources. If one asks the question, why are we failing so much? And why are many of the economic indicators show negative results? It can only be as a result of the intervention of human beings, the allocation of resources, and how resources are being applied. That's the only justification why Namibia today, we are facing a situation of a high unemployment rate. Our economy is going down. Yes, COVID-19 does have an impact on the performance of our economy. It does also have an impact on our debt to GDP ratio, and so on and so forth. But there are fundamental problems that the executive had to take note of. Honorable Deputy Speaker, I want to tune into one specific statement, which I think is a very significant statement that was made by the Honorable Minister of Finance. And I want to comment on that purely. The Honorable Minister of Finance said, we are facing a number of economic challenges. And then the Honorable Minister of Finance went on to say, to achieve these objectives, enabling macro-critical structural reforms are needed, and the implementation could no longer be delayed. That is a very significant statement. It touches on the core problems this economy is facing. When some of us, over the years, since 2015, have called for structural economic reforms, the ruling party obviously did not heed to that call. And I'm glad the Honorable Minister of Finance, being a SWAPO member, making this statement, hopefully the government would take it more seriously, because that is our core problem. The economy has never been structurally reformed. Our economy has never been structurally reformed, and that is why we have a weak economy. We cannot blame COVID. We have missed a lot of opportunities. That is also very true, that if you have an economy that you don't understand, how do you plan something that you do not understand the drivers of that particular economy? Honorable Deputy Speaker, I fully agreed with the Honorable Minister of Finance that there is a need, number one, for structural reforms of our economy. I remember Honorable Minister asked me a question here in Parliament, Honorable Mutorwa. I want you to listen. Asked a question when I was talking about structural reforms. Said, Mike, you keep on talking about structural reforms. What exactly are you talking about? What do you mean? You remember that? Yeah, thank you very much. You see? Somebody who remembers things. There is a need, Honorable Minister of Finance, as you rightly say, for us to structurally reform our economy. And to copy your words, it can no longer be delayed. But sometimes to utter these beautiful words without really sort of moving into action would be a futile exercise. Because I'm sure that a Minister of Finance somewhere within the 30 years that we've been in power, made a similar statement. But what has come out of that call for a structural reform? I hope this time around, now that the basics has been elevated by COVID-19, now that we have realized that even being dependent on other countries for foodstuff is a risky business, now that we have acknowledged the fact that we need to enhance the capacity of our economy to create jobs, I hope something honestly will be done about this. And it's not going to be just another lip service. Honorable Deputy Speaker, by offering some advice to the ruling party and the government of the ruling party, structural reforms are needed in many areas of our economy, and we must aim at these economies. Is it him again?
Honorable Kabekotora, are you aware that we had a recession for almost 5 years? 5 years recession. It's not only Namibia, the whole world. Commodity prices. Second one, are you also aware that you are a farmer? We had a drought for the past 3 years. And for the past 7 years. And then we have COVID-19, where we have to divert resources. So be reasonable and be honest. Structural reforms, what you are talking, you don't even understand what structural reforms means. Thank you.
Honorable Deputies,
Can you put your machine?
You don't take those factors into account.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, I think SWAPO have made a mistake. Because I'm good in trend analysis. Every time I'm offering a solution, there is Honorable Noyoma, is the one who would stand up. I'm sure that you have noticed that. Would be the one to stand up and to try to derail my comments. But every time the honorable member does that, he ends up sitting down. I don't know when he's going to learn that I'm perfectly capable of responding to that. And if you listen to my statement very carefully, Honorable Noyoma, if you listen to my statement very carefully, you should have acknowledged the fact that I did footnote the challenges that your government is facing. I'm not running away from the fact. I did footnote that. But perhaps because you have a specific agenda and you were sent by SWAPO to confront Mike Kabekotora whenever he stands up, you seem to ignore some of the things that I'm telling you. I mentioned that COVID does have an impact on our economy. Before that, I also mentioned that commodity prices did have an impact. Recently, I even told you that the money that you put into fish rot, the corruption, in other words, that you might be also part of based on the information that we're getting from the outside, also has got a significant impact on the performance of our economy. I tried to explain to you a very basic economic principle, Economy 101, to say that you guys are putting money in the wrong activities. And I tried to bring you very close to a very simple thing. that if you have a certain amount of money, a proper utilization of those funds will be to go and use it for the basic things. This is where you as a government has failed. Food security, you failed. Housing, you failed. Education, you failed. Health, you failed. These are the basic things. And I think if one can extrapolate that and look at the money that has been enriching you, most of it. That is why I have a problem, Honorable Deputy Speaker, to declare my assets. Because from the word go, I had a problem believing that Honorable Noyoma is declaring the right assets. I have a principal problem. And that is demonstrated by the colleagues who are now, some of them are free, who are now in jail because of the fish rot. Did they actually declare the actual assets that they had? We can go to where those assets are being stored, where those reports are being stored. It will demonstrate that this declaration of assets are simply a lip service to the whole principle of wanting to declare assets.
Point of order. Yeah, can you?
Wait for your mic.
Thank you. To sit on now.
Yes.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Member, you said you were going to be brief, but you are trying to be long. And what you are really trying to send is not something new that we have been talking about every day. This issue of fish rot, the corruption,
Let's listen.
we say we cannot allow the corruption. Those people, where are they? They are in prison. Yes, they are. They are not with us. And the legal system is taking its course. And you will hear that corruption. There is international corruption going on, but you hear people saying, if you are not arresting those who are accused of corruption, then you are condoning corruption. In this case, there are those, I am now using the Namibian law, until the court pronounce yourself, you are alleged. But they are in custody. So that, yeah, you can mention those ones, you can mention the ones which are not there, you go and prove your point, and then they are going to be dealt with accordingly by our laws. Why can't we look into the reality? We want to play around to say COVID-19 has not impacted our economy. No one can say that. And that is the reality. And here, this budget, we are not asking for extra money. We are not looking for extra money. We are making savings in order for us to manage the COVID-19. You are also making allegation of the prosperity plan not having achieved anything, which is not true. The report is there and it has been presented. Let us be realistic. We know it's a campaign time. We know it's a campaign time. But let us use our time. Let us use our time resourcefully, not just to keep talking on the issue that we know is being addressed. This fish rot, the people are there and the courts are taking, the legal system is taking its course.
Yes. Honorable Kabagotara.
The only reason why it took me a little bit longer than anticipated is because of the interruption by Honorable Noyoma. I'm just responding to her, not to you. That is the reason that it took me a little bit longer, because it was allowed that Honorable Noyoma comes in with irrelevant issues. I have learned one thing from the ruling party, and that is when you touches upon something that is almost like a very sensitive nerve, somebody will stand up and say something. Honorable Deputy Prime Minister, I'm a very quantitative person. And when you talk about corruption and you say you're doing something about it, I would want to believe you. But there's no proof that you're really doing something about it. Quantify that to me.
Point of order.
I rise on a point of information, Honorable Kaveko Tora Wanandimba,
You're welcome.
Kaveko Tora Wanandimba. I hear you are Kaveko Tora Wanandimba. Honorable Kaveko Tora, the Deputy Prime Minister seems to be believing that our mental acuity or our mental sharpness is of a slow nature. She happens to be the Vice President of the ruling party of this country. You happen to be, you are the Vice President. Yeah, you happen to want to be President also. SWAPO Vice President. The Vice President of SWAPO is trying to fiddle around the reality that your own party is the biggest accused of fish rod money. Who in SWAPO is in prison as the party? Your youth league leaders, some of them sitting here, are directly accused as part of the fish rod money. You have not brought any internal investigation in the fish rod saga. Your own Congress that elected you was financed by fish rod money. The t-shirts you had, the cars you had, the people that were paid, and you are saying because of Service Angala that is in prison, we have done anything on fish rod. Lastly, there are over 300, I'm on a point of order. There are over 300
He is
accounts.
talking on a point of order.
I'm on a point of order.
On a point of order, please.
Let her sit down. Let's sit down.
You can raise after he finishes.
She must sit down. Because when they never be mendacious with facts. Never lie about facts. There are over 300 Namibians sought out to be involved in a fish rod scandal that needs accounts to be opened. And we know who are the biggest protector of certain lawyers not to open accounts. So when you speak of fish rod, you have no moral authority, no moral ground. You have done nothing on fish rod. Nothing.
Right Honorable Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, wait for him to say something and you can stand up. Wait for him to say something. Can we listen? Order, please, yes?
I could not have agreed with Honorable Vinani more.
Yes.
Somebody who's protecting corruption
Point of order.
cannot be responsible for saving this country from corruption. It's a contradiction. It's a serious contradiction.
Can you
And
put your mic on?
those two items,
Deputy Prime
those
Minister.
two items,
Honorable Deputy Prime Minister.
those two items are mutually exclusive.
When I remove my mask,
You
can
cannot
say
protect corruption on the one hand, and then on the other hand defend corruption.
Yeah, you can
It's
put your
simply
mic.
not on. It's
Yes.
mutually exclusive.
Yes, put your mic, please. The point of order.
Honorable Speaker, you are talking in this chamber. Yes, we are on the budget, but the issue that you are touching are also not part of the budget. Now, I refer to it. Those 300 accounts you are talking about, bring us all the accounts, bring us all the facts. Yes, but if you also have them, why can't you make them available? Bring them.
Please, no dialogue.
This generalizing, want to blackmail SWAPO will not let you anything. You bring all your facts, and SWAPO is there to defend itself. That's all what we are saying. Bring the things. Generalizing. That will not help. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Honorable Kabekopera has the floor.
Let's have a common understanding. This is an undisputable fact. When you protect corruption, you cannot simultaneously defend and fight corruption, because those two principles are mutually exclusive. And it's a fact that the ruling party is protecting some fish rot people because of their involvement in the fact that
Yes.
You start calling people out by the corruption, person by person.
Yes.
Person by person.
Comrade, you are already Deputy Speaker, honorable members.
On a point of order, information or question?
It is common from the opposition parties in this country to want to paint the SWAPO party.
Can we listen to what he said?
As a party that condones corruption, as a party which is said to be engaged in the so-called fish rot. Now, my question is, listen, the honorable members, you don't listen. You don't even listen.
Can we
You
listen
don't
to what
even
he said
listen.
and you will respond? We don't
My question is, are you aware that SWAPO party has put it on record about what is being said in this country that SWAPO party benefited? There was a press conference in this country held by the SWAPO party president and attended by many of us as leadership. And we have put the records clear. You don't even listen. You don't even listen. And we have put the record clear that you cannot raise a point of. No. We have put the record very clear that you can look into SWAPO accounts. You will never find fish rot money there. What are you saying?
Okay, we now go back. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Speaker.
You round up.
It's the second time.
Can he say something before? Can you allow the honorable member to say something before you stand up? Did he say something?
On a point of order.
Okay, no, just stand up and say something before he stands.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, you might recall, as a matter of fact, this is the second time for me to hear the word so-called.
Sorry,
The one by the
point of information.
the president of the country.
point of order.
Must I go?
Yeah, you can allow him.
What's the point of order here?
Allow him to intervene.
Honorable Kawekotora, I'm very sorry to disturb your flow. But the Honorable Nicanor, ex-councillor from the south, has prompted me to disturb you. Honorable Nicanor, I want to inform the House of the following. If you've worked with inmates and you are consulting, the people who have conducted legal clinics would know. You ask a person, what have you done? The first word that this person will tell you is, I allegedly, there's always, apparently, allegedly I have stolen. Ne? So yes, innocent until proven guilty, that's quite correct. The point is this. We had a minister who was sitting there next to Honorable Dawson. That's the Honorable Swaki Shangal. The ardent defender of the lack of corruption in SWAPO. Today he's in jail. You do not, we do not, Namibians do not take SWAPO for its word. Yes. We take the record of SWAPO as the proof of SWAPO's corruption. You said, you just now, you stood up and said, so-called fish rod. That on its own is a denial of fish rod, and it's you are condoning corruption. It's a fact. Let me tell you why SWAPO is corrupt and why this honorable is. What is that? I'm on a point of view. Sit. Let's tell you your corruption.
It's information.
I'm hitting a nerve, that's why. SWAPO is corrupt. Let me tell you, SWAPO is corrupt, and the reason why the Fish Road 6 is in jail is not because SWAPO wanted them to be in jail. It's because there was video evidence of that corruption. Where are the thieves? Where are the thieves that stole the money that resulted in Kandara's death? Where are they? Are they in jail? They are not. Where are the thieves that stole GIPF money? Where are they? Huh? Where are the thieves of the GIPF money? They are not in jail. Where are the thieves of Kora money? Where are the thieves? Where are the thieves of the SME bank? Where are the thieves of the 40? Honorable Deputy Speaker, where are the thieves of the $46 million that was paid to lawyers in London? Honorable Deputy Speaker, where are the thieves that stole the $46 million that was supposed to be paid to lawyers in London? Yes. That is the information that I wanted to provide. We don't take SWAPO for its word. Yes. In any event, when a thief tells you that allegedly have stolen, know that they've really stolen. SWAPO has stolen the money. We are talking about budget. Budget is money.
Then you stand up. Yes, like that.
We are having you for lunch. We are eating you for lunch now.
I was saying before I was interrupted by
Honorable Kabekotora, you have the floor to round
my
up.
cousin here.
Yes.
I'm being interrupted left, right, and
Left
center.
and right, yes, but try your level.
And I want to say something. I don't know how this came about, but it was started by Honorable Tony, as usual. Now,
So can we allow the...
yes, allow me now to come on board.
No, who wants to start this stuff?
I was saying that
If I'm corrupt, saying Maruka is corrupt, call me out for 1 cent.
Honorable Kabekotora, please try to say
Yes.
something. Yeah, so that the
I was saying
intervention can come again.
I was saying
Can you say that?
this this is the second time, Honorable Deputy Speaker, This is the second time for me to hear the word so-called. One, it was said here by the president of the country, and the second time is now by Honorable Nicanor. I want to remind this House again of another statement. During the questioning of the president, when the president was... Say Papa,
Honorable Gabekotoro, please don't listen to them. Try to respond and try to round up.
I want the people to hear me.
Yeah, they cannot
And
hear
Sepep
you,
also.
the people
Honorable Sepep.
talk.
I want to make another statement. On a point of order, somebody was saying that
Can we listen
SWAPO
to the response?
eventually made a statement trying to push them out and exonerate themselves from the fish rot. But it was in this August House during the questioning time of the President, where the President said, I'm not at liberty to say anything because my lawyers said I must not say anything about the fish rot. Again, it's another contradiction, but that's for another day.
Honorable Gabekotoro. Hello?
Honorable Deputy Speaker.
Yeah, but the president is not here. Concentrate on these people who are here. Please. Please. Yes, it's like that. Concentrate on what the people who are
I want to put some of these arguments to rest permanently.
Yeah.
Honorable Deputy Speaker,
Yeah.
I was talking about structural reforms.
Yes, thank
And
you.
if you take out corruption as not being part of the structural reforms that we have to initiate, then we are missing the point. Honorable Deputy Speaker, there is a need for us to do structural reforms in our democratic institutions, including some of those institutions that are supposed to fight corruption. We need to re-engineer so that these institutions of democracy can contribute to economic development. We need to have a long-term strategy for infrastructural development. The typical example is that sometimes we plan things haphazardly. We put up a railway from Chumep to Ondangwa, but the link from where the source comes from is totally dilapidated. It's a waste of resources. There must be structural planning as far as that is concerned. We need to re-engineer our mining sector so that we can have revenue streams at optimal levels. We need to structurally reform the manufacturing sector so that we can add value to our own products that are currently being exported in rough form, and therefore enhancing profitability and circulation of money in other countries. We need to also, structural reform is needed in the private sector so that the private sector can play a significant role in our economy. Honorable Minister of Finance. Currently the private sector is yearning for wanting to help, but they are being pushed out by the government and therefore they are not operating at optimal level. We need to re-engineer our franchise economy, Honorable Minister of Finance. A franchise economy has got a tendency of exit of money from that economy to the country where the franchise is coming from. And I think you would agree with me, continuing to do that will always result in the expatriation of money from Namibian economy to other countries like South Africa, for instance. We need to bring back our construction industry, Honorable Minister of Finance. The construction industry during your 30 years of government is now owned by the Chinese.
Yeah, point of order. allow the question?
Just raise your voice.
To allow the question?
Can you allow me to ask you a question?
Go ahead.
Raising the voice.
Do it.
Yes, just wanted to ask, yes, you mentioned the aspect of franchise economy. How do you bring it against the aspect of globalization that the same Mr. Kavakatora was promoting? And also, how do you bring it against the fact that due to globalization, almost everywhere, actually all economies are interlinked through this franchise economy. Wherever you go, you see the same, probably not actors, or is it, hertz travel, car rental that you find in France, you find it in New York, in America, and you find it in South Africa. And here, because of the lack of travel, we think they are all South African franchises. Maybe you could elaborate on that and see how can one divorce, and what time frame do you give to an economy?
Yes.
You see, you can come up on a point of order, but
Yeah, yes, please.
the point that I'm making, and I think that to respond to your question, let's not confuse globalization with, no, just listen. You just asked me a question, I'm responding to you. Listen. Cannot confuse globalization with economic capturing. There's a big difference between economic capturing and globalization. We have a situation where Namibia is moving to being captured, our economy is being captured. And it's because there's no contingency planning done for us to localize the economy. Let me give you an example. You have a situation where almost all Namibians, apart from the politically well-connected SWAPO members, are excluded from economic activities. Because the laws that you put in place put certain conditions on how one should participate in the economy. You're excluding Namibians, and then you're favoring foreigners. That is not globalization. That is captured. You are captured. So let's just make a distinction between the two, because that is not globalization. What is happening, for instance, in the construction industry? Do you call it globalization? It's not. No, I'm coming to franchise.
No dialogue.
The franchise economy. You know where it came from. It came because of the fact that Namibia was colonized. Now you're pointing fingers, you're not listening. Namibia was colonized by South Africa. Unfortunately, having the likes of Honorable Nuyoma, nobody thought of saying, how do we transform our economy to be more realistic to the current situation? As an independent country. We currently have an exit of money moving from Namibia to South Africa because of those franchises. If you believe that that is the ideal scene, then obviously, again, I will have to make the same statement that I did to Honorable Nuyoma, that you don't deserve to be part of the government. Because the government should stand for its people, cannot stand for the foreigners, like the exit of money through the construction of the State House, the deepening of the port of Walvis Bay, all the army infrastructure, and everything else has got to do with construction. Then the Minister of Finance is totally surprised when there is a liquidity problem in our economy. How can you be surprised if you are responsible for the exit of money from our economy? Honorable Deputy Speaker, I'm sure that I've responded. Yes. Yes. So, let us bring back, Honorable Deputy Speaker, our construction industry. People are committing suicide because the takeover of our construction industry by the Chinese. Money is being exited. You must understand that the Chinese are forming an economy within an economy. Go to America, they have Chinatown. What do? They consume their own consumables. They marry their own wives. Chinese. They do everything so that they can have a closed economy, and then they expatriate money from that economy into the economy. Jobs are being created in China with money from Namibia. Let me give you one specific example of lack of planning or fail to plan. The port of Walvis Bay was deepened by the Chinese at a cost of 4 billion Namibian dollars.
Even the painters were Chinese.
Yes. What did they do? They, from their side, were good in planning. They have a long-term plan of 50 years on how to capture Africa. When they done that, after they completed that, the Chinese, Honorable Nuyoma, are currently busy with the Lobito Corridor, rehabilitating the Lobito Corridor through Angola. What they are doing, they are saying that to get copper from Zambia, for them it's more economical to export copper through the port of Lobito than the port of Walvis Bay. So they took the money that, because of our lack of planning, not us, because of your lack of planning, they took the money from Namibia, and now they are using those resources for their benefits. When are we going to wake up? Every country, there's something that we called, there's nothing such as a free lunch in this world. It didn't start for. What does it mean? You go to China and you come back and you tell us you have negotiated as equal. How do you negotiate as equal if you don't go with a plan and you're just being given a specific plan to implement? Therefore, colleagues, let's wake up. Honorable Minister of Finance, let this structural reform of yours have meaning. Because if you just say it without implementing it, without being realistic, without convincing the likes of Honorable Nuyoma and Honorable Hinda, you are in the wrong place. Because if you are serious about it, do something about it. Our economy is suffering as a result.
Your point of
Thank you very much.
Okay, the next one is Honorable Dr. Esther Munyangwe. You have a floor. Honorable Doctor, can we listen to the gallery? Please, can we listen to the colleague in the gallery?
The floor is mine now.
Yeah, no.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Speaker. I rise to make few remarks on the 2020-21 mid-year budget as presented by the Honorable Ipungu Shimi, Minister of Finance. Honorable Minister, let me first commend you for your bravery for trying to do a very difficult job without the necessary tools. COVID-19 measures and restrictions wreaked havoc with the economy and hence government finances. As much as you have kept within the limits of the main budget, 72.8 billion, this is a clear indication of depleted government options and fiscal space. One would have loved to see a bigger economic stimulus and support to households and businesses amidst a sharp economic contraction projected at 7.9% as presented by the Honorable Minister. Honorable Deputy Speaker, in my maiden speech during the main appropriation bill debate, I posed a number of questions. I thought this midterm review will at bare minimum attempt to address some of my concerns. But I should say that I'm somehow disappointed. The questions that I asked during my maiden speech were many, but they are still relevant today as it was then. And I want to repeat few of them. How can we avoid a jobless recovery post-COVID-19? How can we grow the economy post-COVID-19? How can we get out of the debt trap with a total debt stock which is estimated to reach 70% debt to gross domestic GDP, gross domestic product ratio? How can we get out of the debt without any prospects of economic growth? The debt trap caused by the pandemic, of course, that nobody foreseen, and in part also by government's past mistakes. How can we avoid further marginalization of communities during the next emergency? Or maybe I can also adjust my question. What has government done to address the marginalization of our communities brought about by COVID-19 restrictions? Honorable Minister, I was expecting at least some answers to these concerns. It is now almost 7 months down the line that you came to this August House, but I haven't seen any clear economic recovery plan. Of course, the Honorable Minister referred this August House to the Harambee Prosperity Plan number 2. Honorable Minister, honorable members, one wonders how different this Harambee Prosperity Plan 2 will be from Harambee 1. Harambee 1 produced bleak results, and that is why I'm putting that question. Your proposals presented on page 14 and 15 of this midterm review on economic recovery and job creations sounds very good, but for me it sounds more theoretical and more academic. When do you expect to inform this House, Honorable Minister, and the Namibian nation what your economic recovery plan entails? In the interest of the time, Deputy Honorable Speaker, let me briefly turn to a few points regarding the midterm budget reallocations. Firstly, Honorable Minister, sexual and gender-based violence in this country has reached the biblical Sodom and Gomorrah proportions. Following the Namibian people's outcry, I was expecting more funds being allocated towards addressing these monstrous crimes committed against our women and children. The question to the Honorable Minister is, do you think, Honorable Minister, that with these resources allocated to law enforcement and protection institutions, the Namibian state will be able to fight this evil that we find in our communities? And if I may ask, is there any way more funds to be availed to stop these monstrous deeds against our mothers, sisters, and children? The few shelters we have been neglected. So how much funds are dedicated to enable the proper functioning of these houses of safety? Honorable Deputy Speaker, as I'm moving towards concluding my contribution, My second point is on the railway. The additional 75 million allocated to public enterprises include maintenance of our railway. The railway does not need maintenance. It needs an overhaul. It needs renovation. The rehabilitation of the rail network will need in excess of 2 billion. Is this additional allocation not just a drop in the ocean, which amounts to nothing? Are there any plans on how to rehabilitate our railways? The NSA statistics only include the demise of formal sector business, but no statistics about the destruction caused by COVID-19 restrictions on the informal sector. Here I'm talking about the vegetable and kapana vendors, the systems, taxi owners and drivers, and the list can go on. I was expecting from you, Honorable Minister, to come up with a comprehensive support package for the downtrodden. Your once-off 750 emergency income grant was appreciated, but did very little to support those informal traders devastated by COVID-19 restrictions. Are you now or in the future, Honorable Minister, thinking of a package aimed at supporting informal sector businesses? Lastly, can the Honorable Minister enlighten the House why you are also quiet on the future of Air Namibia, RCC, and other loss-making parastatals? Air Namibia workers, their lives are hanging on a thread as losing their jobs become a reality. The sooner government makes up its mind, the better. The options are two, as proposed by government: liquidate or bail out. I cannot just close my eyes and propose something based on nothing. The Minister of Works, without delay, should inform this August House on the cost implications of these two options, so that this August House can decide on future appropriations to Air Namibia based on informed decision. The case of the RCC is slightly different from Air Namibia, although it is almost the same. Liquidate or bail out, or keep RCC on life support. The longer it takes for government to make up its mind, the higher the cost to the taxpayer with every passing day. Again, I'm saying, we in this August House, we are the representatives of our people, we are the custodian of the people's finances, and should be informed without delay. Finally, with regard to the IMF loan, I wish the Minister to inform this August House how far that application is, and perhaps how safe is it to borrow from the IMF in terms of compromising our fiscal independence and national sovereignty. With those few remarks, Deputy Honorable Speaker, I support the 2020-2021 mid-year budget as presented by the Honorable Minister. I thank you.
Next, I recognize Honorable Joses. You have the floor.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, honorable members of the 7th Parliament, fellow Namibians, I rise to add my voice in support of the 2020-2021 mid-year budget review and medium-term budget policy statement. From the very beginning, I take great cognizance and appreciation of the $841 million Namibian that has been loosened up and reprioritized towards urgent programs of OMAS with the aim to better capacitate the state against COVID-19. The budget seeks to set our economy on the right track and give the necessary policy certainty to set our economy or to realize our economic growth. The review further aims to deal, Honorable RDP, the review further aims to deal with structural socio-economic challenges such as the high unemployment rate, widespread poverty through the creation of funding schemes that will meaningfully empower youth, women and SMEs. It further aims...
What did he say? What did he say? Yeah, let me hear. I didn't hear.
What is the number?
Sorry?
Mike.
On a point of order?
Honorable Speaker, if you allow sarcastic remarks to be made here, RDP is a political party that I lead. And therefore, the Honorable Member cannot refer to me as Honorable RDP. She must withdraw that.
Honorable RDP. It's not insult.
Honorable Deputy,
Proceed.
Honorable Deputy Speaker,
How can she, she insult your party? Did she insult your party? No. Just, I want to listen.
You see, that is how things start, and then it explodes to...
Can I listen to one person who's taking the floor?
Am I allowed to call the Honorable Member, Honorable Hage Gengo? Ask him. Tell me.
Sorry?
Would you allow me to call the Honorable Member who's talking now to say, Honorable Hage Gengo? I'm asking, I'm telling.
What did she say?
The Honorable Member said, Honorable RDP. And I'm the only person representing RDP here, but I have my name.
Okay.
He must withdraw that. Ask her to withdraw that. Otherwise, I'll call it other names. He must withdraw that.
No, I mean,
Honorable Deputy Speaker,
Honorable? It's not
Honorable
insult, really.
members,
You just say Honorable Kabekotora.
Honorable Kabekotorwa,
Honorable Kabekotora.
the member, the president of RTP, I withdraw. It is not a big deal. Honorable Mike Kabekotorwa,
Now proceed.
honorable members of the 7th Parliament,
Yes.
the review further aims to deal with structural socio-economic challenges such as the high unemployment rate, widespread poverty through the creation of funding schemes that will meaningfully empower youth, women and SMEs. It further aims to decisively safeguard the lives of our people in the light of pandemic that have dearly affected all our lives. Honorable Deputy Speaker, honorable members, fellow Namibians, as expected, real GDP contracted sharply in the second quarter of this year amid strict but needed local and international containment measures to combat the COVID-19 pandemic. These measures were amongst our line of defenses against the virus. What will further affect Namibians' export demand is the fact that the global economy will contract by 4.2%, and no medical breakthrough is yet found inside. We have taken note Furthermore, Honorable Deputy Speaker, honorable members, that the prices of some commodities, such as gold and uranium, has increased this year, whereas the prices of other key commodity exports, such as copper, zinc, and diamonds, have fallen. If further doesn't get encouraging, as indefinite closures of the Scorpion zinc and Weatherly copper mines this year will be a big blow to the mineral and manufacturing exports in 2020. I have quoted from the review, Honorable Speaker, that the contraction in the economic activity is now estimated at 7.9%, a historic high, whose controls cut across all economic sectors and all elements of final demand. This concerns demands from all of us to bring our part in implementing policy that can grow our economy and avert from further economic downturn. I repeat, honorable members, we all have a role to play here. If we come to petition each other, I'm afraid we might not have contributed as leaders assigned to save the lives of this country. Another concern is our economy's over-reliance on certain key exports, namely diamonds, copper, and fish. Hence the need to diversify and facilitate new economic sectors such as modern agriculture and robust manufacturing. The review further speaks of a number of key policy priorities that are material over the medium-term horizon, namely inter alia, the implementation of a comprehensive economic growth and recovery plan as an integral part of the Harambee Prosperity Plan number 2. Anchoring microeconomic stability and fiscal sustainability through a concerted implementation of a growth-friendly fiscal consolidation program. The above policy priorities underpins the very core of what we need to do structurally, reform our economy and spearhead growth. It also places in the best and most capacitated position to deliver services. Honorable Deputy Speaker, honorable members of the 7th Parliament, fellow Namibians, allow me to zoom in at this juncture on the reallocations that we made to the various ministries. Social grants, you will agree with me, honorable members, are a powerful tool in uplifting communities. Hence, we are also in support of the 157 million allocated to the Ministry of Gender Equality, Poverty Eradication and Social Welfare. In light of the scathing increase of gender-based violence cases against women and children, the Ministry must capacitate and fast-track the work of its committee aimed at coming up with solutions against SGBV. The plight of women and children to be protected is now greater than ever, and all stakeholders must bring their part. Further, for the Ministry of Gender, we are extremely happy to witness the materialization of interventions in the Omaheke region with regards to the children living on the street without shelter. The use of a farm to develop a training center to train them in variety of skills is highly welcomed and should serve as a model for youth integration into much needed mainstream. I am further particularly happy of the 326 million Namibian dollar allocation to the Ministry of Basic Education. With the increase of COVID-19 cases in schools, this will greatly supplement the education sector's defense against the pandemic and bring about the much needed educational infrastructure. We also see great work the Ministry of Agriculture is doing in water infrastructure and provision. We see water being provided to the most poorest and rural communities. We need to emulate the water provision initiatives and ensure our communities receive water. It is as a result that I support the 40 million allocation to this ministry. I hope in the next midterm that it will be increased subsequent to deliverables. I am further happy to see the 147 million being allocated to the Ministry of Health and Social Services. Amidst the challenges it is facing, the ministry has done well in fighting the pandemic and ensuring the well-being of the country. We are overly excited, particularly me, to learn of the additional 500 million funding program that will be launched by our central bank. This speaks sheer volumes and commitment towards capacitating youth and SMEs. The above are clear models that we should continuously learn from when it comes to meaningful programs that create social value. I would have loved to see Honorable Deputy Speaker, honorable members, fellow Namibians, during this midterm allocation, that funds would have been allocated to the Ministry of Higher Education, especially in further capacitating the ministry to assist tertiary institutions, online learning, and assist vulnerable or deserving students through the Namibia Students Financial Assistance Fund. Of course, organized and well-facilitated coordination can bring more deliverables on the mandate of the fund. There are a number of strengths that we as a country should benchmark on. For example, growth is expected to rebound, Honorable Mike Kavekotorwa. The current account deficit has narrowed. Stable politics and a sound, well-developed financial systems are in place. If we can only make use of these low-hanging fruits to our advantage and towards uplifting of lives of our Namibian people, we would have done wonders to our country. Honorable Deputy Speaker, honorable members of the 7th Parliament, to divert a bit from the budget, allow me to also congratulate the Deputy Minister of ICT, Honorable Emma Tiefolus, and Agribank for launching the Women and Youth Non-Collateral Funding Program recently. It is programs such as this that will propel new and emerging SME agri-sectors and value addition that will aid our diversification agenda. It is now our burden to create literacy around these programs and ensure the country's youth make full use of it. I conclude, Honorable Deputy Speaker, by placing emphasis that we all have got a vital role to play in seeing the policy priorities, materializing and seeing tangible outcomes. Honorable Ipumbushimi, as MPs, and I believe the same sentiment is shared across the chamber, we are ready to get our hands muddy and work tirelessly towards implementation, monitoring and evaluation of the midterm budget. With these few words, I wholeheartedly support the appropriation amendment bill. I thank you.
Yeah, very good intervention indeed. Very good. Okay, the secretary can now read the second. Huh? Or in the absence of anyone who would like to contribute, any response from the Minister of Finance? Oh, no, there's somebody.
Sorry.
No.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, can I agenda it until tomorrow, please?
Yes?
Or is it taboo?
The debate is adjourned till tomorrow. The debate is adjourned till tomorrow.
Thank you.
Any objection, Honorable Minister?
Are you okay?
Minister? Okay. The Secretary will read the second order.
Resumption of debate on how our democratic systems are impacting development in this country.
When the Assembly adjourned on Tuesday, the 20th of October, the question before the Assembly was the motion by Honorable Kabekotora that the motion be adopted. The Right Honorable Prime Minister deferred the debate. She's not here now. Anyone who would like to take the floor? Anyone who would like to take the floor? I recognize Honorable Minister Tommy Arendo of Mines and Energy. You have the floor.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. I rise just to make a contribution to this important motion tabled by Honorable Kabekotora. Honorable Deputy Speaker, I think the Honorable Member raises a very important issue that is at the heart of our democratic dispensation, and I think one that we should examine closely. Democracy is necessary for development, and so is development necessary for democracy to flourish. It is still not, however, clear which causes which. But as the eminent Indian economist and winner of the 1998 Nobel Prize for Economics, Amartya Sen argues, and I quote, he said, "Participation in one's development through open and non-discriminatory democratic process is a universal value." And I agree with him, and that it is a value, I think, that we should safeguard jealously. Honorable members, in thinking critically about how our democratic system is contributing to development, I think we need to first define what we mean by democracy, and also to examine the values that underpin a democratic order. In so doing, we will be able to identify potential threats to democracy and also hopefully to have strategies in place to deal with such potential threats. As the Honorable Member rightly points out, scholars and politicians have long debated and unpacked the concept of democracy. And the one conclusion I think they all have arrived at is that democracy should be thought of as a power to the people, or rather as a system of governing that depends on the will of the people. Now, as such, for a country to be truly democratic, there must be political competition in the form of free and fair elections, and also infused with the respect of civil and political rights, and also mechanism for accountability. While this definition forms the value basis of a democratic system, it, however, does not fully capture the capacity of global developments to influence domestic democratic processes. This development, such as the rising levels of global inequality, the climate change threat, the proliferation of intentional misinformation on social media platforms, are fueling geopolitical tensions, and I think in the process influencing development outcomes in many countries, including ours. Honorable Deputy Speaker, it is here that I believe it is important that we understand democracy first and foremost as a process, the outcome of which is development. And if we accept that democracy is a process, then we should also accept that our democratic process is influenced by global developments. And as we know, we now live in a world that is more interconnected than ever before. We are now connected globally by trade. We are connected by technology, and recently also by viruses such as the COVID-19 pandemic. It is therefore important for us to ground our democratic process within the wider global context. And when we do so, it will allow us to necessarily think more broadly about how global developments impact our democracy and therefore our development outcomes. Now, Honorable Deputy Speaker, the question arises then, is there a crisis in a global democracy? During the last 2 decades, we have witnessed growing concerns about a crisis in global democracy. The concerns about democratic backsliding are to a great extent noted in the economic and technological shifts of globalization. We can also see how these shifts have coincided with and also inflamed the rise of populism, political polarizations, and widened inequalities. According to the latest evidence-based reviews on the state of democracy, the merit of democracy as a development panacea have come to under strain. A recent study by the Center for the Future of Democracy at the University of Cambridge has found that democracy is in a state of deep malaise, with growing political polarizations, economic frustration in Western democracies. The conclusion that we can draw from these studies, Honorable Member, is clear, and it is that the future of democracy is more contested now than ever before. And therefore the question is, what do we do? What does this mean for us? What these developments seem to suggest is that people feel that democracy is either not working for them, or if it's working, it's not working properly. But while this is a worrying trend, I believe that there is a cause for optimism. I believe that, for example, the COVID-19 pandemic has forced us to rethink our commitment to democracy. Evidence of this can be seen in how politically polarized societies were able to come together and respond to the crisis in a very effective manner. This also points to an appetite for greater democratic participation by an informed citizenry. What does this mean for our own democracy, as the Honourable Member says? How does it impact our development? Honourable Deputy Speaker, there is no doubt that our democratic process has achieved a lot in the last 30 years. I believe we have managed to have democratic stability that has been an indispensable condition for development that goes further than just economic growth, but also includes social dimensions. But I believe that 30 years is an opportune time to take stock of our development outcomes, while also reflecting on the daunting challenges that we face. Honourable Deputy Speaker, honourable members, but while democracy might seem to be in a crisis, the evidence does suggest that the increasing dissatisfaction might actually reflect a higher level of civic engagement and democratic participation. For example, our recent experience with the hashtag Shut It All Down is a signal that if informed citizenry is raising the bar of expectation on the standards of democracy and development. And I believe that this trend should really be encouraged and not to be discouraged. It is widely accepted that an engaged and critical citizenry improves the quality of governance. In conclusion, Honourable Deputy Speaker, despite the suggestions, I do not believe that our democracy is in a crisis. I believe that our democracy is maturing, and as such, it places an enormous demand on us to defend and safeguard the democratic process against threats such as inequality, corruption, and violence to ensure that we achieve sustainable development outcomes. Honourable Deputy Speaker, democracy is a hard work, especially when it requires that we respect views that are different from ours. Democracy demands on us that we recognize contributions made by those who do not look like us, those who do not speak like us, or those with a social status different from ours. For democracy to thrive, we should be more tolerant of one another and our differing views and opinions. Going forward, Honorable Deputy Speaker, we must do more of those things that will strengthen our democratic process and less of those that will weaken it. We need to embrace and incentivize those with new practical ideas that strengthen our democratic process. We also need to agree to make ourselves reasonably uncomfortable by listening to the demands made by the young people and by venturing into unexplored fields and doing things no one has done before. If we approach our challenges in the Harambee spirit and with tolerance, innovation, and empathy, we can enhance our democratic process and improve our development outcomes. I thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker, and I support the motion by the member. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Also, very good intervention. Anyone who would like to contribute? Anyone who would like to contribute to this? None. Honorable Kabekotora? Huh? Oh, no, we cannot wait. Yeah? Oh, Honorable Kabekotora, this is not his motion. No one is contributing. Oh, I recognize Honorable Dr. Yambu.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. May I ask the indulgence of the House to move this point to what is their preference? Maybe Thursday? When? Tomorrow? Maybe there's only tomorrow, yes, even tomorrow, that's fine. If that is acceptable.
Yes, she thinks. Yeah, the item is adjourned till tomorrow. Hmm? The item is adjourned till tomorrow. Okay. The secretary will read the third day. There's still 5 minutes. Well, I cannot see the Honorable because supposed to be. Can you read the third day of order because I cannot see anyone.
A resumption of debate on the need to promulgate the Flexible Land Tenure Act of 2012.
When this assembly adjourned yesterday, the 21st of October, the question before the assembly was a motion by Honorable Venani that the motion be adopted. Honorable Dr. Yambo adjourned the debate. We have now the floor.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. Before I give my contribution, I really would like to say a few things, and I wish the Speaker was here because he is the one who always, who is the one who is always trying to call my contributions names. But considering the time, I think I can, people are already tired.
Yes.
Yes. I think it will be appropriate for me to just start tomorrow instead of going on now because it's 5:45.
Okay.
Yeah.
The item is still adjourned till
So the speaker
tomorrow.
will be here also.
Before we adjourn,
They will
please take note, very important, important that we are going on recess this Thursday. This Thursday. So we must finalize all the items by Thursday, otherwise they will lapse. With this, I give the Honorable Tony to adjourn the House till tomorrow. There's still 1 minute. Honorable Tony, we follow the seniority. You must adjourn the...
Thank you very much, Comrade Deputy Speaker.
Yes.
The House stands adjourned until tomorrow, 14:30 sharp.
Yes. The House is adjourned till tomorrow,